and welcome to episode 87 of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. I'm your host, Robert Steinman, Pale Robbie on the boards. Joining me today, let's start with Derek first. I want to introduce Derek first.
Hey, I'm Derek. I'm still Embryon on the boards, even though you never see me there. And it's been kind of a busy last couple of months. It's been a crazy semester for me at the university, so I haven't been around much. I've missed the last couple episodes of the podcast, but hopefully I'm back to stay. It's good to see you all.
At uni, as they call
Here
it
you
down.
At uni. Right.
That's what Andrew calls
Right,
it.
yes, right.
I'm really feeling it, so yes, it's great.
Cool. And we also have Steven here, ladies and gentlemen.
Steve Myring, Tales from the Boards.
Steven, I
Hello.
get to play Inquisition early while Rob has to play Lords of the Fallen early.
How is Dargon age? I like Dargon.
It's an RPG. It's a game.
It's
cool.
a game.
Let's move on.
I'm gonna jump into the John McCarroll school of game description. Well, it's an RPG that has characters and some combat. It's got some stats. It's got music. It has actual music in the game. You can use controls to play it.
But are there graphics?
There are some graphics.
Okay, cool. Yep.
You guys are such children.
Good show.
We actually have 4 people on this week's episode as we are joined by Caitlin.
Hey guys, Caitlin Ardros, Link is around on the boards, and this is all part of my evil plan to take over all the podcasts.
We know.
Damn it, why did we let her in here?
Because
Too late!
we
Oh,
were just
no.
Everybody betray me.
Everybody betray me.
And I just died in the Binding of Isaac. Oh, that's sad. Okay. So we have a lot of games to talk about, guys. There have been a lot of major releases lately. Do I have to talk about Lords of the Fallen?
Yes, we have
Yes.
to talk about Lords of the Fallen.
Yes.
This podcast.
Oh, God. Okay.
We talked about how good Dragon Age was for like an hour and a half last night. We have to talk a little bit about Lords of the Fallen.
Well, give me 1 second. Stephen, why don't you introduce Lords of the Fallen, as I have a student coming up to me asking a question right now who's taking a test, and I knew that was going to happen the second I started talking. So, Stephen, introduce Lords of the Fallen.
How about instead of introducing Lords of the Fallen, we have Derek talk about Fantasy Life, since I've never played Lords of the Fallen.
Well, we can talk about Lords of the Fallen. I was going to mention that I saw this game at E3 last year, and despite the developers' absolute best intentions, they were very nice people, and they had a very nice booth, but that game is just ugh. It really, I hate to make such a base comparison, but it really is kind of like the poor man's Dark Souls, and I'm not a fan of Dark Souls in the first place. Did you know that, by the way? Did you know that I'm not really into Dark Souls? That's kind of weird, I know, but
Nope.
Well, that makes my Christmas present.
I don't
a
know
little
where
bit
I'd know
less
that
exciting.
from.
no,
I sort of
feels similar to Dark Souls. It's got a very similar, like a similar camera angle, similar mechanics, almost the same interface. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
So I sort of trolled Rob a little bit. He was ranting about how bad it was, and I was like, "Well, some of the reviews say it's okay," and I was pretty much trolling him as hard as I could. I was like, "Maybe you're just not very good at it."
You're such a... Oh,
and
my God.
Then I watched like 20 minutes of gameplay footage, and I was like, "Dear Lord, this looks." I've heard a lot of arguments, people saying, "Oh, it's a really great game," and I'm like, I feel like the same people saying that are the people saying that Dragon's Dogma is a great game.
Yeah.
This is great because it's sort of like a really good game, but not everybody likes it, so we like it.
I mean, I'm not
What
trying...
I'm looking for is hipster Dark Souls.
If people like the game, that's perfectly fine. I'm never going to take something away from people that like it. But when Derek played it at E3, I was really interested. I was like, oh, what's this game going to be like? Is it going to be good? What's it feel like, Derek? And Derek kind of just looked at me as like, it's pretty crappy Dark Souls. And I was like, oh, no, come on. It can't be that bad. No, Derek was right. Derek was 100% right when he played it. It's got some good ideas. It kind of has the starting Dark Souls style combat of health meter, stamina bar, some magical attacks. I think what I liked so much, what I was so intrigued about it, was that it really goes for this weighty style combat where you're swinging swords the size of boat anchors. And I really like that, but it doesn't feel like that at all. Like when you play God of War and you connect with like the Blade of Artemis, like it tears people in half. It feels really good when it hits people. It feels really good and chunky. This game, you end up hitting somebody with a battle axe the size of a small car, and they don't even register a reaction. And that just really, really bothers me. Yes, as Jackie's holding up a piece of paper with the boat from Pacific Rim, where the robot comes out with the boat and hits the kaiju with it. You're waiting for that kind of impact in this game, and it just doesn't happen. None of the attacks feel good. There are a whole list of problems. Like it's just very janky. The frame rate is a mess. It just never feels good. It never feels like this game is coming together. And I think the worst thing I can say about it is that it doesn't feel like it's following through with its vision of we're going to have this really, really weighty combat. It's not doing anything with it.
Yeah, the demo that I played was focusing a lot on these contextual encounters, like in Dark Souls, where you need to use the environment to your advantage, or there has to be some kind of trick that you can use, or something just to make each encounter interesting. And the one that I recall was there was a giant enemy, and there's a pit that you have to trigger in the middle of this little arena to make him fall down. And the dude just stops walking when I trigger the pit, stares at me, and then walks forward straight into it and falls to his death. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's great job, guys, with your super intense encounters. It seemed like they were trying really hard to make everything interesting and dynamic, but at least at the time that I played the demo, that was the demo, so I don't know what has changed. But you said it's pretty janky, so I don't know if they've polished that up very much, those aspects.
Yeah, it's very video gamey. Like the first boss in the game, he has a shield, and you have to attack past the shield. And it just feels kind of terrible. It doesn't really feel like you're getting really good impacts. Then the second boss, he summons, guys to help him out, and he has an insta-kill attack if you don't get into the right area, where the game tells you nothing of this when you first do it. It doesn't tell you that you need to get away from his giant, I'm going to annihilate you unless you're under this little gazebo trick. The third boss has this thing where he can drain your health at the same time he drains your mana. It's very video gamey. And it doesn't help matters that the art direction looks like a Gwar concert from 1994. Like the whole thing is just all shoulder pads and giant meatheads, and it's just not,
It sort of reminds me of the Guitar Hero, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 aesthetic that I just absolutely hated. Because it was like Guitar Hero had sort of like a neutral aesthetic at first, or like, rock and roll. And then they were like, Gwar!
Yeah, everybody looks like Lars Umlaut in...
okay, well, I do like Lars Umlaut. He was my favorite character.
Everybody looks like that. And, there's something to be said for that kind of cohesive art direction, but it just never feels good. It just feels like this game... They knew what they wanted to make, but I don't even think that they accomplished what they wanted to make. They wanted to make this really meaty combat that feels, really special, really impactful. And the most damning thing I can say about it is it never does feel that way. And I just got really bummed out as I just kept playing it, because there were moments where it felt really good. There were moments where I was able to, really spearhead a dude with an awesome attack, and I was going, oh man, that felt really good. But they were so few and far between that eventually I just gave up, and I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take any more of this just really janky game. And I'm sorry, but it needed about 2 more months in QA. I'm kind of, with all the Assassin's Creed Unity stuff coming out right now and how much crap that game's gotten, I'm kind of surprised that Lords of the Fallen is kind of being like a critical darling to some people. I'm like, guys, I had people disappearing. I had people blocking attacks when their shields weren't up. I had times where I just wouldn't take damage. Like I was getting attacked from behind. I had 12 arrows sticking out of my back, and I'm not taking any damage. Like this game is rough. It is a really rough game, and I think we're kind of seeing that across the board with a lot of new releases right now for the new consoles. And I don't know if that's coming from over ambition or if it's because a lot of games started out as PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 games. I don't know what it is, but we're kind of.
I personally think we need to get this game out for the holiday because of sales numbers. So we'll just release it now and patch it later.
Right. And I think Lords of the Fallen could have been something really special with a little bit more time in development and a little bit more time to get their systems right. They actually do some cool things with like the level up structure. I kind of like that, how you can level up different magical abilities. You can kind of bank your experience points, or you can push ahead and keep getting a bigger and bigger multiplier for every enemy that you kill. They're actually doing some unique risk reward stuff there that I kind of liked, but it never comes together in a proper way.
Would you play a sequel?
I mean,
that answers that question.
With all
that is your answer right there.
With all the technical issues ironed out, it's still a very average game. It doesn't have a good art direction. It doesn't have, in my opinion, it doesn't have an interesting story at all. Its combat is kind of, it's not as responsive or as fun as either of the Souls games that we've had up until now. And then you add the jank on top, and it's like, no, I'm kind of good. I do not think I would play another one.
Well, that's good because you get to save time to play the next Dark Souls DLC anyway.
I'm not playing that. I am not playing that. I've already gone on record as saying I'm not playing it.
It's interesting to me that you don't like it too, because like it gets reviewed really well. I mean, I haven't played it, but I say that having not finished Dark Souls 2 because I thought it was not nearly interesting enough to warrant being finished.
I thought that the DLC was getting crap reviews.
It's all over the place. Some people really like the DLC for Dark Souls 2. Some people don't. I'm firmly in the don't like it category. It's just more enemies that have big giant swords and they're really clumsy.
That's why I couldn't beat Dark Souls 2. It was like, the levels were pretty, but that whole we've started designing things as levels and not as that world that the first game had made it feel way too gamey, and like, it took finding secrets. It made that sort of feel a little less entertaining, and just the fact that every other boss was a dude with a sword was just lame.
Yeah, and I think that there's a greater problem with the Dark Souls 2 DLC where they definitely took the criticism of, hey, Dark Souls 2 isn't hard enough, because I firmly believe that Dark Souls 2 is easier than Dark Souls 1, and I played both games again recently. I have a lot more problems with Dark Souls 1 when I play it. Dark Souls 2, I can kind of move my way through it barely dying.
I think part of the issue is that they didn't recognize that people didn't like Dark Souls because it was difficult. Like, the difficulty helped facilitate part of the game's design, but like, I didn't go, this game is great because I'm dying a lot in weird ways. It's like, no, this game is great because it has fantastic exploration and combat and really challenging risk reward.
Yeah, and to get back to Lords of the Fallen with that, so Dark Souls 2, I think the DLC went way overboard. I mean, there's one boss in the second DLC. I just can't beat him. Like, I played him 40 times. I did not even get close to finishing him. I got him down to a quarter of his health one time. Lords of the Fallen, it's funny. I died a lot playing it, but I never felt like it was hard. I just felt like the controls were completely failing me at the exact wrong moment, and I was getting killed because of it. The boss that is able to heal himself at the same time that he drains your health and drains your mana, I knew exactly what I had to do. He has these little critters on the ground that you have to break open to prevent him from healing himself, and it's kind of an opportunity for you to attack. But when I'm sitting there swinging and I'm missing them because they're right in front of me and the hitbox is all wrong, and then I get hit and Harkin takes 3 days to get up, and then I get hit again, that to me is not difficulty. Like, a difficult fight is the fight against Artorias because he's very, very aggressive, but he gives you opportunities to hit him.
Artorias is one of the best bosses in that entire series, and
yes,
it's hard to compare to that even for a really good game.
But it just,
Artorias is the perfect kind of difficulty where you need to know how to fight him, but if you do, you can beat him perfectly.
Yeah, and this game just never feels good. It consistently felt like the difficulty was purely artificial, and I was getting so frustrated because I would know exactly what I needed to do, but just something didn't work, or I died in a stupid way, and just it just felt miserable. Like, and then there would be this flash of brilliance where I would just hit somebody with this super hard hitting weapon and everything kind of worked right. But then there's stuff that doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm sitting there using a short sword and it's stun locking an enemy, and then I hit him with this giant axe that does 3 times as much damage. And that's not stun locking him. Like, the enemy's shrugging it off and not caring. Like, for as many problems as I had with Dark Souls 2 in that regard, like occasionally enemies just ignoring attacks, that never happened where I hit him with a stronger weapon that was doing more poise damage and the enemies were just flat out refusing to acknowledge it. That just happens way too often in this game, and it really does scream of a title that probably came out of the oven a little too early as being very nice. I don't know. I part of me does want to see a sequel. Part of me does. Like, I think that they could maybe make this. I got kind of a Mark of Kree vibe when I was playing it. Like, if you guys remember that game from the PlayStation 2, am I the only one that knows Mark of Kree?
No, I know what that is.
No, I played it. It had the cool little swinging laser thing.
Yeah, like the swinging laser to like attack different guys, and then when you got the battle axe, like you would tear through 2 dudes and like absolutely cut them in half. I think that's the direction they should go with it. Like, keep the stamina meter and everything, but make it so that you're fighting maybe a lot of enemies, but when you reel up and attack, if you connect, it just eviscerates people. Like, that's maybe the direction for them to go. Not this one-on-one combat against really lame enemies that just don't behave properly and kind of cheat their way to victory. Just none of that. Just go with the power fantasy. You know what I mean? Why not just go with it? If that makes sense.
No, I can dig that. It sounds like the game sort of had a really solid design vibe going for it. They just didn't execute on those ideas.
Yeah, I don't know. It really bummed me out. I was super excited to play it. I liked what I saw, and I'll be honest, I was like, "There's no way." So, Derek was wrong. I'm sure he was wrong. It's got to be good, and it was just like, nope.
Nope.
No, I fully admit that I have some amount of bias, and I tried to go into it with an open mind, but that's just because that's not the kind of game for me doesn't mean that I can't recognize when it's good in some areas. Like I recognize when Dark Souls does things right and why people. I recognize why people like it is what I'm saying. And Lords of the Fallen, when I played it, I was just like, no, this.
Yeah, and it sounds like it can be a taste thing, but in the case of Lords of the Fallen, it's not.
Yeah, it's the same feeling I had with Radiant Historia. Like I didn't get into that game, but I still respected it so much. Like it didn't do it for me, but I could recognize that it was a good game.
Oh, you're just a nutter butter.
You're so mean to me. So where do we go from here? Do we go immediately into Dragon Age, or do we talk about how much I love Sega right now?
Let's talk about how much you love Sega.
Sega.
So the time that it took us to have our last podcast to now, Sega announced and released Valkyria Chronicles on PC.
And there is not a single person who is not happy about that.
And I was so happy to see that game was the #1 bestseller on Steam for a limited amount of time. It's still in the top 10. It was the #1 bestseller on Steam above Assassin's Creed Unity and Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. And I'm not saying that to be a troll, like, here you go, guys, JRPG is so much better than every other genre. These games are horrible. That's not my point. My point is that we've been hearing for so long from publishers that we don't want these games, and very clearly that is wrong. People do
absolutely.
These games.
People especially want them on PC, I think. It's like every time, it seems like every other week, it's like some developer took a chance releasing a JRPG and it sold gangbusters.
Yeah, right? Like
it's just, it has to not be the terrible JRPGs. Like, no, Hyperdimension Neptunia is never going to sell a bunch of copies. It's going to sell enough that the publisher is happy with it because that's a niche title that is not meant to appeal to everybody. But that's sort of the lesson they should take away from it, is that it doesn't have to appeal to everybody. A broader appeal JRPG like Bravely Default or Valkyria Chronicles is a smart choice because people want to play that. Like, I don't want to, like,
market's in a good place for it too.
Yeah, I agree. I think there aren't a million of them out now, so it's a smart move. Especially, it's sort of like, when you have that friend who's like, all anime is Dragon Ball Z. Well, no, Dragon Ball Z is a very like pulpy kind of anime. Not every JRPG is a Tales game or Neptunia. Not that I would hold those in the same regard, because I like Tales games and I think Neptunia sucks. But it turns out people want to play video games. You just need to release them.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that.
I'm almost wondering, what do you guys think the sales numbers, or do we have any information on the sales numbers for Final Fantasy 13 on PC? Like, I really want to know how that did.
I'm curious. I don't know. I do know that either Square Enix listened or they were pressured into, they're going to be including actual PC options in the port of 13.2, and they're going to be patching, modifiable resolution and getting rid of like hit escape to insta quit from 13. So maybe for Square it was a case of, well, we're just going to release this now and fix it later, or maybe it was a case of, well, we're going to release this now and sort of hope nobody notices that it's broken, and then they got sort of pressured into fixing it. But either way, they're fixing it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I'm happy with Valkyria Chronicles. I bought it full price. This will be like my 4th time trying to play this game, but I've decided that that's the next game I'm going to play right after I finish the next game we're going to talk about. But it looks great on PC. It looks like they put a lot of options into it. It's just a gorgeous looking game. If you're looking for an awesome strategy game, we've talked about Valkyria Chronicles before. It's $20 on Steam. Just support it. Like, I was going to wait for a Steam sale, and I said, you know what? I'm going to use my dollars to vote. Like, I want people to know that this is a good decision. Maybe it means we're going to get Yakuza. Maybe it means we're going to get Valkyria Chronicles 3 finally released.
Yeah. Oh, please. Oh, please. Oh, please.
Yeah, Caitlin, talk more. Like, tell us about your love of Valkyria Chronicles.
Well, do we have an entire podcast for Valkyria? I don't think we do.
The floor is yours.
If we can devote like 8,000 podcasts to Dark Souls, we can devote one to Valkyria.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah, dick.
This was such a great experience that I don't know, it came out of nowhere for me. I mean, I knew I was going to like it from like the first time I saw a screenshot, but I didn't realize how much I was going to love it until I played through it. And all I could think is, I want more. And then we got Valkyria Chronicles 2, which I still personally like. It gets a lot of flack, and it's not as good as the first one, but it's still a great game. And then 3 comes out in Japan, and everyone's talking about how awesome it is and how it like this is the true sequel to the first game, and it's like I want to play it.
When did 3 come out?
Yeah, since 2 was super divergent. Sorry, go ahead.
When did 3 come out?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
I have to look that up.
It's sort of funny though, because I played 2 and I remember not liking it as much because it sort of took on that we're going to compartmentalize the experience and military school it. I mean, I only played it for like 2 hours and I barely remembered it. I just remember I don't like it when games sort of try to do that, where they sort of try to quantify their experience into like, it's the Shin Megami Tensei 4 argument. I made this joke last night, but I can't stand it when you
on
put
that game.
like, well, no, like even games I like do it. Phantasy Star 4, all the side quests are on a board. Final Fantasy 12, all the marks are on a board. Like, I don't want to go to a board and get a quest from a piece of text and then I turn it into a piece of text. Like, and like in that regard,
it's a very inorganic way, I think.
I prefer sort of a diegetic way, and I think Valkyria Chronicles 1 having such a like this really tight experience, and then going to 2 where it was like, now you're going to take on missions as students, which isn't inherently bad, but it changed the flow of the game, and I think I sort of feel like that's part of the reason people didn't dig on it.
Well, it wouldn't be the first sequel that sort of flipped things on their head.
Certainly not.
The original.
The important thing... Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe it wasn't necessarily the right kind of flip that they wanted. I don't know. I recognize like all of the tropes that are present in the main cast, which, I don't know, maybe didn't bother me as much because I'm used to them. The military setting made perfect sense considering the first game. I actually kind of liked it. It was kind of, it was sort of like Persona meets Valkyria Chronicles, because you had classmates and you had to spend your time and you had to learn about them and do things with them and whatnot. But
I think it's definitely also good of them that they didn't just try to repeat the same formula. So, I mean, I definitely appreciate it from that standpoint. And certainly it has the gameplay aspect of it. I think didn't they specifically say that they were reacting to Persona when they added the sort of who you're going to spend time with thing?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
I think I remember them saying like, we can't ignore Persona.
Why should you? It's amazing.
Exactly.
I still have a sealed copy of Valkyria Chronicles 2 on my
shelf.
Wow. I feel really bad about it. Yeah, I just I
at least you bought it though.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta buy this and then I'll get to it when I finish the first game, and that never happened, but now I have a chance. So,
indeed.
To play it super pretty mode.
Aside from the sort of plot that I actually really liked when I played the plot in the first one. I got to, I think it was like chapter 12 or something, but I don't remember how long it was. But what I really liked about the first one is sort of it gave you that sense of strategy that you get from sort of, grid-based strategy RPGs, but then you sort of got that immediacy of moving around, getting fired at under cover and aiming and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it was a really great combination, sort of like how Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor combined strategy with the sort of tacticalness of a turn-based battle. Valkyria Chronicles sort of combined it with a different style of combat and was equally successful, I think. Like that immediacy you get from it is just really great in that game. And like, the mission I stopped playing at where you fight the giant tank, I remember just the scale of that being so far beyond that they just did a great job as an experience making that seem significant because of, if you think like if you had like a Final Fantasy Tactics camera in that game, you fight a giant tank. Oh, it's a big unit. Whereas in that game, it's like there's this tank bearing down here. You're going to die.
Yeah,
I loved that mission. That was one of my favorite missions.
That tank has gotten me like 3 times. And I that's actually been the stopping point for me with that game. And so I'm going to push through it this time. I have promised myself that.
There you go.
I feel like that's
where
I
both competed.
We sort of came up with this last night on the Dragon Age stream. I decided Rob doesn't like to die in games. Rob likes it when he can almost die and then win. and he gets angry when he gets killed.
But see, certain games can kill me and it doesn't bother me at all. Like I'm sitting here playing The Binding of Isaac right now, and I don't mind when I die in this game. I'm like, whatever. When Dark Souls kills me, 9 times out of 10, it's because I did something wrong. Shin Megami Tensei 4, yeah, I was getting my ass kicked in that game a lot, and it's because my party build sucked. I don't like it when a game suddenly changes its mechanics on me, and I did feel like that tank battle and then the thing that adds on top of it at the very end of that battle, that did piss me off a little bit because it was like, well, my guys are.
The thing it adds.
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to playing it again. I think one of my favorite things about that game is I love anime that isn't overly anime, if that makes sense. Like
you like anime that isn't shonen anime.
Yeah, that's probably it. Like I really enjoyed Attack on Titan. You know, I know I love Dragon Ball Z, but I love Record of Lodoss War. I love Cowboy Bebop. I love anime that kind of treats its characters like real people. And I really liked the characters in Valkyria Chronicles. They're just so clever, and they feel real. I mean, there's things like racism in the game, which is really cool. I mean, how many games can we talk about that actually deal with those kinds of issues?
Not very many, and I think that is indeed one of the strengths of it. That's sort of a story that rings a lot truer than I think most. No, well, no, I don't. That's not necessarily accurate, but I think that game in particular does a great job of that.
Well, they found a great way to personalize it with Isara and making you like her and root for her and work on her side, and then seeing how the other characters in your party reacted and got to know her and got over things. It was a great way to frame the issue, I think, instead of just having it be like nameless people that you talk to as NPCs or whatnot.
Because that happens sometimes where a game is like, here's your backdrop, there's racism happening and it's terrible, but you don't actually get the people involved with it. You don't actually see anybody impacted other than the faceless NPCs or what you read in the lore books of the game, you know? So
yeah,
the relatability is what helped it a lot.
I also like it when there's like a reason for the racism. Like, you know, it's not and that's not me advocating racism, but it's like it's not enough to say, oh, this racism is bad. Like, I love District 9 when they talk about the prawns and they're talking about how like they're taking jobs, they're taking resources, like we hate them, we want them to go away, these are refugees. Like, that's where the racism is coming from. It's not coming from like we're evil, nasty, awful people. The racism is coming from a very real place, and that makes it much more palpable. It also makes it far more disturbing, because then you kind of start to see the intricacies of why humans interact the way they do. I think Valkyria Chronicles really nailed that.
I think it sort of relates, and not to spoil anything, but that making it relatable, if not agreeable, is like, look at Breaking Bad. Like, the reason that show is so compelling, or one of the reasons, is because you sort of sympathize with Walter even as he's doing horrible things, and that's supposed to make you uncomfortable.
Right, exactly. That's
because you could see how he got to that point.
It's the Tony Soprano argument from The Sopranos. It's like, this is a terrible person. We don't like him, but we're almost rooting for him. Maybe that's a strong word for it, but we sympathize in a way. We kind of understand the reason why this is happening. So I'm excited. Good on you guys, Sega. Keep that up. Keep that up and don't let me down anymore.
And now the next thing that I'll be waiting for impatiently is Trails' second chapter. Someday. But at least that's announced and being worked on, so.
Well, I think we've been beating around the bush enough. Is it time to talk about Dragon Age?
Sure.
The only time now is party time.
Because I found out that you can romance Iron Bull if you're a dude, and that is metal as hell.
That is awesome. I didn't even realize that.
So I didn't use... I was telling you guys this before the show, and Rob and I touched on it very briefly last night, but I didn't use Iron Bull a whole lot in my playthrough for review, just because I wanted.
You don't like because you didn't, Junior.
I don't like Kunari. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
You racist.
You racist.
You racist.
I'm not a racist.
I need to explain it to me. I need to.
He has 3 Kunari friends. He told me last night.
That's not at all. No, that is not what I said. That's what you said. No, I just it's the same reason I don't pick different races when I make a character in games. I just
racist.
I can't be a racist. I used Blanca in my party in Shadow Hearts, okay? He's not human.
Oh, whatever. So Dragon Age Inquisition, you guys saw it last night on our live stream, and I think we we really seem to like it quite a bit.
Yeah, what I was getting to is, and that's sort of a good way to bring into it. People know BioWare for their great characters, among other things. And Iron Bull is a great character. Like, I definitely followed along with his dialogue and stuff, just because every character is so interesting and diverse. It's not a situation like in Mass Effect 2 where it's like, yeah, I have Jacob and Miranda who are just there. I mean, I know people like those characters, but I sort of felt like next to the rest of the cast, Jacob and Miranda were sort of not quite as interesting. And there's always that character in a BioWare game that you sort of don't care about. And I feel like this game, at least for me, I found everybody very interesting. And that's sort of because the writing in Dragon Age 3, and we didn't talk a whole lot about that last night in the stream. That's why I wanted to sort of open up with that, is that this is, I think this is the best job BioWare has done combining a narrative in terms of the overarching storyline with character stories that are interestingly tied into that narrative and also have their own things going on. Like Cassandra, the character people know from the second game, at first she doesn't seem like she'd be an interesting character because she's kind of an archetype. She's like the pious Templar, or not the pious Templar. She's a seeker, but she worked for the Chantry, an arm of the Chantry, and sort of like, she was faithful. That was her thing in Dragon Age 2. But in this, it's sort of like, there's a particular conversation she has early in the game where someone's like, your duty is to the Chantry. She's like, no, my duty is to the principles on which the Chantry is founded. And that sort of forms the foundation of her character arc, in that she's like questioning, like, did I make the right choices? Am I like betraying my faith? And I'm not a person of faith, but that's an interesting story. And every character has a sort of interesting arc that they go through that really ties into it's not like I'm just with you because I'm good at shooting people. They all have reasons to be there that are interesting and organic. And the writing as a whole, there's a lot of diversity in the game. Like, the game sort of touches, there's like a transgender character or several. There's like, characters with homosexual romances. There's, all kinds of stuff touched upon. It's the scope of the game extends beyond just the fact that it has a gazillion areas, or, giant areas and tons of stuff to do. The writing and the scope of the world are also very, very large and very nuanced and well done.
I didn't realize there were transgender characters. I actually hadn't seen that in the game yet.
Your playable party, no, but like within the story, you run across like different characters, and so, you'll see. I don't want to spoil anything, but the game is very good at incorporating diversity without being heavy-handed about it. We are a long way from Enchanted Arms and Makoto.
Oh my god! Wow, yeah, he's something.
You
ready for this?
Are you ready for this?
Is that the Beware My Arctic Blast guy, or am I thinking
No,
of
that's
something?
He's a character in Enchanted Arms who he's like an ice mage. He uses a saxophone, or I don't remember what his element is, but he casts spells using a saxophone. And that's his quote when he does a spell. Are you ready for this?
So, Caitlin,
yeah, that was a rough game.
So, Caitlin, you've had a chance to play some Dragon Age, correct?
Yes, because Stephen was gracious enough to let me steal it from him for a couple of hours.
And what do you
Came
think
over
of it?
and sat at the computer.
And what do you think of it so far?
I think that I can't wait to jump into it on my own because, I don't know. I had like maybe 6 or so hours, I think, total with the game, and barely scratched the surface. But everything that I've seen, I would agree pretty much 100% with Stephen on writing, on characters, on combat, on graphics. And I spent most of my time in the hinterlands doing side quests and not really getting too much of the main plot outside of unlocking a few characters. And I never once felt like this is busy work or I didn't even really feel like these are side quests. I was compelled to just keep exploring that one massive area out of several massive areas. And
I think that's going to be a really common story, Caitlin. Because, my review, literally, I had like 25, 30 hours, and I was like, oh god, I need to leave the hinterlands.
But I don't want to leave the hinterlands. That's what's so amazing about how they designed these massive, and I know they used the word Skyrim but in a good way, esque sized areas, is that they're interesting and detailed enough that you feel compelled to keep exploring them in an organic way. You never really feel like, oh, I have to get like 100% map completion. It's more like, oh, well, there might be this area over here with like this cult that thinks that the rifts are their new god, or maybe I have to go kill a bunch of rams because people are starving, or find medicine for this poor woman. It's that kind of exploration that really drives you in these areas. And I think they kind of reach that magical point between gameplay and story within the exploration.
Yeah, like those side quests, like even the Ram one, which that is sort of an MMORPG. Like we need 10 Ram steaks basically. Those are sort of the smaller tasks that make up a lot of the bigger tasks. And like it's like it makes sense. We need food here because this place is full of refugees because the Mage and Templar War is driving people out and out of their homes. So like even those side quests that seem like they would be sort of asinine are tied into creating this sense of the main story being present everywhere. And yeah, like it continues to do that. And that's why sort of I'm playing through now again, because I want to have that chance to explore every area and like get all those little stories in there. The comparison to Skyrim will of course come up because Skyrim's the latest big RPG. But we sort of I mentioned this in my review. We discussed it last night, Rob. I think a better comparison for this game is Xenoblade in terms of what the areas are like. It's sort of like the Dark Souls health system where, as you make forays out into these giant zones, you find camps, and the camps function like Dark Souls in that, it recharges your healing potions and your character's health, which is no longer recharging after combat. But the size and the scope of the areas is more Xenoblade, where like it's not Skyrim size, but it's a big giant area full of interesting things, as opposed to here's a ton of space with some randomly generated ruins and some randomly generated side quests.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like the perfect balance between having interesting things to do and having that space be filled with those interesting things to do, and then having too much space. Because I mean, Skyrim is fun when you start off and you're like, oh, look at all these interesting places I can go. And then you realize, like you said, it's basically one thing after another, and you kind of lose interest after a while. It's
very homogenous.
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of everything, like going to one dungeon sort of starts feeling like you're going to all the dungeons.
Yeah. And I never got, even, I mean, granted, only like 6 or so hours, but I never got the feeling like that with Dragon Age. Every place felt like it was its own special, unique place, and I just want to explore more of it. I need to explore more.
Yeah, to that end, basically what I would say about the areas is that even Xenoblade, to an extent, has some areas that are wide open spaces. Not it's on the Wii, so it's a totally different hardware generation. But this game does not have, this is a wide open space with nothing going on in it. Like, you walk up some hills and it's very irregular terrain, and there'll be paths through the rocks that lead into, different places. It sort of feels like a believable fantasy place. And I can't give that enough credit. It's really fantastic.
Your enthusiasm is very dangerous, because I am so broke and so in the middle of games now.
The more I play it,
would be a great use of your money, because you'll get like 100 gajillion hours out of it.
The more I play it, Derek, the more I think you're going to love it.
Yeah, I mean, I watched you guys play the stream for a little bit, and it looks really good. I really like the mix of action-based combat and tactical stuff. So it seems like they did a really good job of incorporating the tactical nature of Dragon Age Origins, and then the flashiness of 2 without dumbing it down too much. So yeah, it looks like a beautiful world, and I love exploring worlds. Is one of the things that I like to do most in games. That's why even in games that are linear, I really enjoy discovering a world and getting into the lore and finding new locations that are unique, which is, not to beat a dead horse, but a big reason of why I like Xenoblade is because it has the whole in-game achievement system kind of thing, where it's like, oh, we're going to reward you, although not kind of paltry rewards, but they reward you for discovering cool, unique locations. Mm-hmm. So exploring is super fun, and I love games that have these immersive, beautiful worlds that you can explore that don't feel empty and dead, because that's, when I played Skyrim, that's how I felt. I think really get into it. Just it didn't really click with me, and Dragon Age looks like it's going to a lot more.
to that empty and dead thing too, I agree. I think that was what I was concerned with, was that these would just feel like giant 3D playgrounds where it's just like, go and find 5 towers, jump off of them, go and find 10 haystacks. Like, I don't like doing those things for the sake of just doing them. Yes, I'm making fun of Assassin's Creed. I hate that series. And, you know, in terms of liking those achievements that you get for exploring in Xenoblade, they have the same, like, literally almost the same thing in this. You know, there's like, if you discover like this waterfall, you'll get like a codex entry, and to the point where you can even get perks for your Inquisition, where it's like every time you find a natural environment formation, you'll get more bonus XP, or, you know, you'll get dialogue options related to the places you found.
Yeah, it's a pretty fantastic game. I was really blown away by it. It definitely is more Xenoblade, I would say, than Skyrim. It has some procedurally generated quests. I mean, some of this, you know, find this thing, but they almost always lead you to doing far more interesting things in the world. That's one of the best things I can say about it.
Just because one of our listeners recently corrected me on that, that's not procedurally generated. That would be like randomly.
Oh, no, you're right. You're right.
They're like those. It has those like checklisty type things where it's like, you know, discover all 21 or all 10 camps here. You know, that kind of stuff. But that's sort of a, you know, like you said, it's sort of like a goal that's there as you're doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As opposed to the focus of the experience.
Yeah, like I would highlight something on the map or a quest that I wanted to go to, and I would start heading off that way, and I would invariably get distracted by something, a quest or an enemy or a rift or something I would find along the way, and then, you know, before I know it, I'm like on the opposite end of the map, because I've just been like, oh, I'm going to go the opposite way I was going, but like there are things, interesting things drawing me in those directions.
Yeah, like it's a much less cynical game than I think you could call Dragon Age 2, because that was sort of, you know, rushed out because, you know, maybe I'm pulling this out of my butt, but, you know, that was a game that EA was like, well, we got this franchise, Dragon Age, make a title. All right, it's done.
Well, and there were also a lot of reports that game was originally going to be an expansion pack for Origins, and then it didn't. I mean, I don't know how much of that stuff was true, but I think they got the punchy combat right in Dragon Age 2, and now they've upped the punchy combat with really great exploration and world building. And I think Dragon Age does a really good job of taking the fantasy genre, which, Steven, you've said before, you're not a big fan of fantasy sometimes. You know, it has to be very interesting for you to get into. I think
I'm not looking for the 19th version of the elves, basically.
Right, and I think that they start out pretty generic with their elves, dwarves, Kunari type thing, but then the politics of the world, they do really go for that Song of Ice and Fire feel of there's multiple factions, they have multiple reasons for existing. It's not just, oh, let's go out and kill the big bad.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think you know, I like the first Dragon Age. You know, I don't necessarily like it as much as people do, but I recognize why people do. And I like Dragon Age 2 a lot. And I've always thought they had a lot of interesting lore. Like the Fade is a really cool concept, and like the Golden City at the center of the Fade is a cool concept. And I think that they've slowly but surely done a great job of fleshing that out into this interesting world that feels very believable.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty impressive. I think it might be my game of the year. I know
it's my game of the year.
It's up there for me.
I'm saying it right now. Unless Persona Q somehow manages to be like better, which it'll be awesome, but at right now, I'm like, how is it even possible that anything could beat this?
Shovel Knight, guys. Shovel Knight.
I still need to play that.
It's a fun game.
I like that game. Zeta Rhythm, but Zeta Rhythm, I think, I don't know if I can give my game of the year to, just because it is more of something that I've already played, as awesome as it may be. So
I think my game of the year is tied between this or Curtain Call. I may actually just, you know,
flip a coin.
I might just cop out and say these are both number one.
Man, I got to get this then. I think, I don't know, I'm going to have to pull some strings, do something.
Do a little bit of reading online, though, Derek, because the game is not friendly for newcomers. If you don't know what a Chantry is versus a Seeker, you might get a little confused.
Well, I want to do the...
You might not be reading the Codex, too. The Codex does a great job
explaining it does, but it takes some work, I would say, on the part of the player. That's not a bad thing.
Well, isn't there a tool to help you it's basically to work in decisions from the past two games, kind of like the Mass Effect comic?
It's
much
like
better.
The comic, only even better. It's very elaborate. So basically what it will do is it will show you a movie of 1 and 2 and ask you to make the major decisions, and then once you're done, it'll say, here's like 500 choices that were made in the games. How do you want them to play out?
Okay. Yeah, I like the idea of an interactive
them.
timer.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Much better than just like, oh, here are the decisions that you made. Yeah. So, and rather than just toggling things, I appreciate that it works through them bit by bit. I'll have to do
Yeah.
that. I think I might do that regardless, and then see what happens and see. I mean, I'm sure that will only fuel my hype, and then I'll get into it.
Give it
One
some
of
time.
us.
One of us.
Iron Bull. That's all I'm saying.
I'm probably going to use Iron Bull a lot more in this playthrough.
I'm loving him.
This
he's a lot of fun.
is seriously though one of those games where you want to use everybody because they're all so interesting.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I've really wanted to use everybody, and everybody just has really cool stuff going on.
Yep.
We could talk about Dragon Age all day, but we probably shouldn't.
Stop us now.
I'm playing it right now and loving it.
Oh, golly. All right, so what else do we have to talk about here?
What else do we have to talk about?
I think I have Freedom Wars, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you've been playing that?
Not as much as I would like. I got distracted by something called Dragon Age, but
Never
yes.
heard of that.
Perfectly understandable.
We should talk about it.
So Freedom Wars was kind of like on my radar and then off my radar, and then it like rocketed back to on my radar right before it was released.
All right.
And
all right,
it's
Britney Spears. Yeah. On my radar. No, I'm the only one here that's going to get a Britney Spears reference. She has a song called Radar. Get out of here. Never mind.
But if I get out, I can't talk about the game.
Fine. Sorry, Jesus. Go ahead.
So
Radar's a great dog's name.
oh man.
Also, okay, now I didn't get that one. What's that from?
No, I just think Radar would be a cute dog's name.
Oh, okay. Anyway, Caitlin. Sorry.
Okay, so Freedom Wars has a really interesting concept. You are playing, like, I guess sometime in a post-apocalyptic future where mankind has just stripped Earth of almost all of its resources, and there's not enough resources to keep going. So overpopulation is a problem, and people are essentially found guilty of existing because they're taking up like air and food and whatnot just by living. So basically, you're thrown into jail and found guilty at birth, and you have like a huge amount of years, like million-year sentences that you have to work off by going on missions and donating to the greater good. The greater good, yeah. Humanity is basically humbled or grouped into these like gigantic city-states called panopticons that are like the major cities around the world, and everyone's trying to like steal other panopticons' resources. Like,
Chicago for life.
Chicago, yes, because there was no St. Louis. So like the civilians who have like important skills are valuable resources, and other panopticons are trying to steal them because, I don't know, maybe they can build them other technology or make their lives easier. And so your character, through circumstances that are kind of mysterious, ends up losing his or her memory, and you get slapped with a huge fine because they've invested a lot of resources into you to make you a good fighter for them, and you are recklessly losing your memories, and that's a huge offense. So not only are you amnesiac, but you have to try and figure out what's going on in this world and how to reduce your million-year sentence. And it's a really interesting, very oppressive kind of setup, because you learn early on that you don't really have a lot of rights. You start off in a cell, and if you try to lie down and sleep, that's against the rules because you haven't earned an entitlement that lets you do that. Or if you want to talk to people outside of your cell without getting an entitlement first, that's against the rules. And every time you do something you get more years on your sentence. So it becomes kind of a balancing act between doing missions, which reduce your sentence, donating items you either can't use or that like you don't have the right to hold, and if you hold on to them, you get more years on added to your sentence. So that's just that whole setup I think is very interesting and not something that I've seen in a lot of games.
Yeah, so you let me play the intro, and I probably left for like 45 minutes, and I found that setup was probably the most interesting part for me early on because I didn't get a chance to do too many missions. But I liked that sort of dystopian setup of like, resources are so scarce that we're not even going to literally invest the resources to let you, eat in this place, or every resource is like considered an entitlement. Because I don't necessarily think that's believable, but I could see the chain of logic that leads to that being the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of a slow burn, this story. I'm not actually that very far myself. I've heard that it picks up somewhere around the halfway point. And it's not necessarily it's not the best presentation, I would say. A lot of it is just text, walking through texts. There are some really beautiful cutscenes. I think that the art style is also another strong point of the game. It's got a beautiful art design to it. Particularly the cutscenes are just really gorgeous on the Vita screen. And I love the customization in this game. You design your character from the beginning, and he can be a he or a she. You can change with their body type and their facial features and their voice and hair and whatnot. And you unlock, as you go on, more clothing options and color palettes. And I think there's supposed to be free DLC that like adds in more hairstyles and things like that. And you can change this at pretty much at any point after you've first created your character. You never feel locked into it. So like if you start off as a girl with like purple hair and decide one day, oh, maybe I want to, be a guy, you can do that whenever you want to. You also get...
Only real life was that easy.
I know, right? You also have an AI-controlled partner called an accessory. They're basically like a robot that watches you, and, whenever you break the rules, they're the ones being like, hey, you've broken the rules. Here's an extra 10 years to your sentence.
Thanks, accessory. God.
Yeah. And you can customize them, too. Completely, and when you get more options.
It sounds a lot like the retainer from Final Fantasy 14.
Yes, only these accessories will actually go out into combat with you, and you can change their strategies. You can order them around. It's a really interesting setup because the game can be played entirely single player, but it has a really strong multiplayer focus as well. And I got to play a little bit with that. It was a little bit hard to get into a match, probably because this is right after it came out, so everyone was so busy playing. But it was fun and very, very frantic, but in a fun kind of way. Because it's usually a group of 4 people and their accessories. So there's like at any one time you're going to have 8 people, 4 real and 4 AI controlled, doing all sorts of things. And the fun missions are the ones where you're fighting these giant machines, which I haven't really gotten far enough in the story to learn if there's anything more sinister going on with them. But it's kind of it's been described as kind of like Attack on Titan-esque, and it does really feel that way because these are towering monsters, and you use grapples. They're called thorns to either trip them up and make them fall down, or to jump up onto them and cut away at their different body parts, or try to free people that are captured.
That was actually what I thought was one of the coolest parts, because it's sort of like a soul sacrificey Monster Hunter type game where, like, at least those particular missions with the big monsters. Mm-hmm. And I thought the thorn grappling hook was clearly, somebody watched Attack on Titan and was like, it would be cool to have a game where you get to do this. But like, I really liked that. I thought the thorn was a cool mechanic because it's like, you can grapple up to a guy and then like chainsaw his arm off.
Yeah.
Steven, yeah. You forgot our rule. Whenever you say that game's name, you have to say it in a different way.
Derek has to say it that way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is Derek paying attention?
Sacrifice.
There it is.
So whenever you're playing Soul Sacrifice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we have too much fun on this show.
Do we though? Man. It's a riot.
I find it fun.
Laugh riots.
So Freedom Wars sounds kind of cool. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail us that completely.
We all kind of lost it for a minute.
I'm sorry, I apologize. We just got sidetracked with your awesome singing voice there, Derek.
Oh. When I was singing before the show? Because that happened.
Anything
I
else?
sing-
We are completely
It's
gone
like-
right now.
Are we all tired? Like, what's going on here?
I think we're all tired, so let's try to regain here a little bit. Anything else to say about Freedom Wars?
I've pretty much gone through my list of things. I mean, I really like it. I don't know when I'll have time to play it more of it because with Dragon Age coming out next week, that.
Other games are going to have a rough time.
But it's definitely an interesting play, and I would recommend it, especially if you're looking for RPGs on Vita.
Yes, you can also get Tales of Hearts R because that came out this week.
Oh, I want that so bad.
There's another game that I don't have time to play.
Actually,
Yeah.
I did play. I think I talked about it on the show briefly, but I beat the Japanese version of that. And it's it's not going to set the world on fire as Tales games lately sort of don't, but it's also a very solid RPG that's very, it's the graphics are basic, but it's colorful and attractive and looks great on the Vita screen, and the combat is rad. It's it's a full blown Tales game on Vita, so if that sounds like your jam, you probably want to grab it, and I
Yeah.
definitely want to play it in English. Though what I found interesting about it is that they sort of went budget on the localization, which better one than none. But they didn't dub it over in English; it's just English text over the Japanese voices, which is sort of interesting because they changed the main character. His name was Shing
Yeah.
Meteorite in
It's hilarious.
Japanese. Now
Oh,
he's
why did
Core, which is sort of it's sort of an attempt to recreate the sort of sense that a Japanese would get from the name Shing. But it creates this weird dissonance when people are saying his Japanese name to him, but the dialogue clearly says something else.
Yeah, like that's actually happened a ton. I've played the game for maybe 2 hours, and that's happened so much. Like in the intro cutscene, there's the witch that's chasing them, and the only thing she says repeatedly is "mitsuketa," which is found you, got you. And they have this long. Every time she says it, they have a different subtitle, and it's a long sentence. She's like, "Worms should crawl through the mud where they belong," and it's she definitely didn't say that.
So it's very jarring, and I think that sort of brings up a really interesting discussion. I'm nerding out here. This is my field. That I like because the original Japanese, it's just like you said, it's Mitsuketa. I remember that, and in Japanese, sort of the not to make broad claims, but in Japanese, it's not quite as noticeable when a word is a word gets repeated a lot more often. Whereas if you write something where you're and you're saying a word a lot, the game was fun, and then I played the game as the game went along, and the game was played, and the game was good. If you said something similar in Japanese, it wouldn't sound quite as odd as it does to us. So I'm actually of the camp that I think localizations can be a chance to sort of have a lot of fun and create some additional flavor.
Oh, I agree with that completely. I just think that the fact that it's not dubbed makes that really jarring and strange.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely
if they
weird.
had dubbed it with the new dialogue, then that would be fine, because I'm all for flavorful localization. Dry localization is what has killed a lot of potentially good games. And
Absolutely.
And it can also go too far to an extent. Working designs translations were always pretty contentious because they'd fill them with 90s pop culture references and all kinds of craziness, which was really entertaining at the time. But I think that kind of thing ages poorly, and it also
I
takes
agree.
away from the original spirit of the game quite a bit. But there's a duality there, because I like some of the stuff that I've read so far in Tales of Hearts R, the one of the characters, Hisui, he's the heroine's older brother. He's said a couple of lines that are nothing like. Well, they have the same general idea, I guess, in Japanese, and the English lines that they wrote or localized are completely different. They'll say, I don't even remember anything like that, but he'll use a lot of alliteration or English idioms and stuff like that, which is fine. It's weird, like you said, that they went the budget route and we're like, oh, let's bring the Japanese voices over, but let's write it completely differently in English. I don't know. And it's especially noticeable to me after having studied Japanese for several years, and I'm sure you as well, and Caitlin. So
I'll just be the one left out. Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
you are.
That's
You
fine.
need to learn Japanese, Rob. It's
No,
awesome.
Go talk
guys-
about Newton's third law, Rob.
Yeah, you guys need to learn physics. How about that?
I took AP Physics in high school.
There you
If
go.
we learn physics, will you learn Japanese?
Did you take baby physics or did you take calculus-based physics?
I took AP Physics.
Again, did you take baby physics? Because there's baby physics, AP Calc physics.
Well, the physics I took was the teacher's not qualified, so here's a list of 25 labs. Complete them over the semester. There's no lecture. We all failed the AP exam because
Physics
we
is
didn't.
for babbies.
How do I stop Babby?
Hello, doggy.
Babby, please.
So do we have any other games to talk about, or should we start talking about news?
Well, I played Fantasy Life, but I
Cool.
haven't played it a ton. I know we were going to mention it, but Fantasy Life is really cool. I forgot that it was coming out when it was, because it was a game that it was announced several years ago, and it's one of those games that I always associated with the early days of the 3DS, and I kind of wrote it off, and it finally came out. So it's a life simulation kind of. I describe it. The closest thing I can think of is as a mix between Animal Crossing and Dragon Quest. Maybe it's got a vibrant, colorful, cartoony world to explore, and you can take up one of, I think, 12 different lives or professions, classes basically. And there are combat classes, like a paladin and a mercenary, and then crafting classes like a carpenter, and gathering classes like woodcutter or miner. So it plays a little bit like, I've heard it described as an offline Final Fantasy XIV in terms of crafting and gathering, and I think that's just a comparison that's being made because of the time that it was released. But it's a very open-ended game. It has a definite story that you can follow, and you can quote unquote beat that story and everything. There's an ending and all that kind of stuff, but for the most part, you can go about exploring this world any way you want. So I thought it would be interesting to take a different approach, and I started it as a woodcutter because I was like, all right, well, this game has a story, but I'm going to try
chop wood.
Yeah, like I'm going to go try doing gathery type stuff first and see what happens. And it works just fine. Like, it's not one of those games where they pretend to have all these options and then they're like, surprise, you actually have to be a combat class to get through it, because that's actually something that the original version of Final Fantasy XIV suffered from, because they let you start as any class. And I think Realm Reborn does too, but and Realm Reborn doesn't pretend like you can get through the main story by being a gatherer or crafter. They're like,
you have to at some point hit somebody in the face.
Right.
Only in your dreams.
Yes. So in original 14, they were like, oh yeah, you can be a crafter, and that can be the whole game experience for you. And that wasn't the case. It was just false. So Fantasy Life actually does that. And the story has enemies that you have to fight as you go through it, but I'm a woodcutter, and I still beat the first boss as a woodcutter. Like, it didn't matter. I was weaker, but I was able to do it. So, and it was kind of hilarious, actually. But yeah, it's a really flavorful game. It's got the level 5 localization thing going for it, where the text has a ton of jokes and it's super punny. There are like puns everywhere, accented characters, and I think it's actually funny. I've enjoyed a lot of the dialogue that I've read, and I've seen some screenshots popping up on Twitter and Tumblr and places with especially funny pieces of dialogue that I appreciate a lot. So it's really relaxing too, and I'm surprised at how well it's meshed with me, because I thought I might lose interest in it kind of quickly. I've heard some people mention that this may be kind of the remnants of True Fantasy Live Online, if you remember that for the original Xbox. It was an MMO that was being planned, and I remember seeing it in magazines and being super hyped up for it.
I wanted that game so bad.
I remember seeing trailers for that on CinemaScape on G4. You guys remember that?
Yep.
Gosh. I remember just thinking the art style in that game looked amazing.
I feel old now. Oh god, I'm gonna be 30 in a month. Oh dear god.
It's over for you, Rob. Sorry.
No.
But yeah, this I've heard that this is kind of the combination of the remnants of True Fantasy Live Online, and then maybe the original ideas that they had for Dragon Quest IX. I don't know how true that is. That may just be a happy coincidence of like, oh, I wonder if that's what happened. But it's a level 5 game, so it wouldn't really surprise me, since those are both level 5. They worked on Dragon Quest IX, didn't they? Or am I thinking of something else?
Oh no, level 5 did.
Did they? I think because they definitely did 8. Did they?
Yeah, no, they did 9. Level 5 did 9.
I'm grabbing the box.
I like that game.
He's double checking.
I don't see
didn't
level
think-
5 on the box.
I'm almost positive, but I am prone to be wrong on occasion. Apparently about Steven's choice in hair color and style for Dragon Age characters, but you know.
My character looks fantastic.
Well, they definitely worked on
Yeah.
Quest 8. But anyway, so level 5 is. I think level 5 recently has been. I think some people have found them to be hit or miss with the guild titles. Those have been up and down. Like Crimson Shroud, I think all of us really like a lot. And I've heard that like Weapon Shop de Omase was so, but I think they always do good writing, and the Layton games are an example of that. I think that they're always very charming, and they cater to a different sort of audience that I would consider myself a part of. So I'm glad that they continue to exist and do their thing, and I like the game a lot. I'm seriously in the middle of something like 8 or 9 games right now, and I have no time.
Don't start Dragon Age.
Well,
Dragon Age is like everything I was playing is like canceled.
Do start Dragon Age and put everything else aside, because Dragon Age is all that matters.
The 30 seconds a day I have to play games right now, or when I'm podcasting, is Dragon Age. So I'll be done in like 10 years.
I think Jackie's going to get mad at me if I try to play Dragon Age tonight.
I don't know. You got to weigh that risk versus reward. It's like combat in Dark Souls, Rob.
At least it's not combat in Lords of the Fallen.
Full circle.
Boy.
All right. So, Fantasy Life, good game. Go play it.
It's cool.
I think, Steven, I think you in particular would like it. And Caitlin, I think you would too. But Rob, meh.
I like games.
Rob would hate it. Rob doesn't like games like that.
See, we're the cool kids, and then there's Rob.
He doesn't like games where joy is the main function.
I think it's just a little bit too. It'll be too meandering for you, Rob. Like too whimsical, and it's pretty cutesy. I'll be honest. Like, do you like whimsy. Animal Crossing?
I've actually never gotten into Animal Crossing, but I like whimsy. It's Steven's the one that doesn't like whimsy.
But I think it's
I like some kinds of whimsy.
Like Wind Waker.
Like Animal Crossing is a game where you play and you really aren't accomplishing anything other than getting items for your house and being amused by the various puns that villagers make. Like, and that's right. So Steven, you get it. You're giggling because it's hilarious. So if you like that, you'd like Fantasy Life, but.
And I would like it because I like puns.
Okay, good. Well, that means you're an objectively good human being. Even though we had our argument this morning, it was a little rough there. Then come on, we were talking about Ys, and she mentioned that she had. You mentioned that you beat Celceta, right?
Yeah, last night actually,
yeah,
which should show you how long it takes me to finish games nowadays.
It's okay. You did it. I'm giving you a high five. Bam, you're awesome. But she was mentioning that Frida is a cool character, and I agree. She's like a
Frida's favorite.
I love Fritos.
Fielder. Yeah, no, shut up. Fritos are bad for you.
No, they're amazing, and you should eat more of them.
Okay.
I'm bringing
Fritos are like fried husks.
I am bringing a giant bag of
like
Fritos
Rob.
to E3.
Rob is a fried husk after playing Lords of the Fallen.
Ooh, yeah, it's kind of true.
Well, anyway, to finish out the story that's not that interesting in the first place, we were arguing about whether Durin is better than Dogi, and I'm Team Dogi.
Hello, Dogi.
I'm
Team Dogi.
Good. Well, okay, see? Steven's on my side.
But that's only because I've played a Ys game that has Dogi in it, so.
Hi, Dogi. And,
I have
Dogi.
too.
Plus, that works with his name.
We have a new editor, Monsoon, Mike, and his name is Mike Solosi. He goes by Monsoon. Hi, Monsoon. And he's also on Team Dogi, so he wins my instant approval.
Meanwhile, I just somehow managed to barely still stay your friend, despite our disagreement, right?
I mean, it's pretty...
I never said I don't like Dogi.
And what's next? You're going to say Iron Bull sucks?
Oh!
I actually haven't met him. I never got to him.
Okay.
When
He's
I was
pretty
playing.
awesome.
I won't suffer injustice against a character I know nothing about, Caitlin. Come on.
Sorry, I just gasped because I
Wow.
almost got attacked by a Druffalo called Druffy, who's like level 14.
Cool story.
Oh, boy.
I feel like I'm being extra dry and you're not picking up on it. You're like, wow, what a jerk.
Canada Dry.
We're just tired. I know I'm tired from the Twitch stream last night, and I did want to say to the listeners, like, let us know if you want more of that, and if there's any like requests for games. I swear to God, the first person that says Shadow Hearts, I'm gonna cane you.
Someone said Shadow Hearts
I did not see it
in the chat. Yes.
I refuse to acknowledge it.
I actually brought it up, and others said it. The fact that you haven't played Shadow Hearts 2 makes you a bad person.
I hate to agree with
And
that.
The best part is that it's easy, so you won't get angry at it and say that the game is pissing you off at the end.
I'm playing Dragon Age on hard. Thank you very much. You are such an asshole.
I'm just saying, I'm trying to anticipate potential issues you might have with it, and getting killed will not be one of them.
Wow, you are a dick. You are actually a dick.
Actually, is Doge.
All right, let's move on to news. I don't like Steven anymore. He's not my friend anymore.
Story of my life.
You're not my friend.
Uh-oh, epic podcast breakup.
I'm so sad right now.
We are never ever getting back together.
I will sing that. You better watch out. No, I won't actually. I just know that chorus part.
All right.
So,
what
kind of exciting stuff is going on, guys? Do you feel any excitement for Majora's Mask 3D? I think I do.
I was actually very excited. I've never played Majora's Mask.
Well, that's going to be an interesting experience for you because I feel like you're going to get really mad and then complain about it.
So, for me, I've never played Majora's Mask, and we all know how I feel about Ocarina of Time. But I've always heard how weird Majora's Mask is. And, I've sort of heard that it's also the hipster Ocarina of Time that people are like, it's so much better because it's weird. And I don't have any opinion on that, but I'm definitely going to play it. I thought the trailer was terrible. Not graphically, but I just thought they picked all of the least interesting things to show. Like, they didn't show any gameplay. They just showed, like, a bunch of very low-key cutscenes. But, again, maybe that's because that game is...
They were showing a lot of things that would immediately jump out to longtime fans of it because I recognized all of that. I was like, oh, that's that thing. Oh,
yeah, that's kind of what I figured they were doing. Like,
So-
playing up the nostalgia a little bit, which isn't a
Yeah.
bad thing. I mean, they're definitely playing to their base by releasing it in the first place.
Yeah, and I think, they said they've been working on it since Ocarina of Time. I mean, we sort of knew that, Link Between Worlds had Majora's Mask in the in Link's house. I think it was sort of just a matter of time. Kind of like how I think it's just a matter of time before we get Twilight Princess HD.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be
And,
okay with that.
No, I actually would too. I'd probably want to finish it this time. I was talking to my roommate about it, about how far I made it, and turns out I made it to the dungeon right before the last dungeon, so I stopped a little too soon.
Oh yeah, that dungeon is pretty weak, so I'd totally understand why you were probably done with it. That game
also,
ends
I
on
just
a
sort
bad
of
note.
something else. I probably started playing something else.
Life happened.
On a related Zelda note, since the last time we podcasted, we have a Wii U in the apartment now, and Smash. But I finally obtained Wind Waker HD, and Wind Waker's the best Zelda. Everybody who disagrees, wrong. Best 3D Zelda.
It's very, very good.
Gorgeous.
It's very good.
It's gorgeous, charming. It has the derpiest Link in the entire series, and
I
I think that's
know.
why he's my favorite. Like, he's such a doofus. When you get a heart piece and he just spazzes out, he's like, "Wow, I'm so excited!" Like, how can you not like that Link?
He is a little derpy. I guess I like that.
But he has like that character arc because he becomes more of like a hero as the game goes along. Like, that's cool development for a Link. Link doesn't usually get that sort of thing.
No, it's true, and I think that was actually one of the cool things about that game, and making the art design look that cool went a long way toward making him feel like a real character. I think more so than anything else that they've tried to do with Link in recent years. He just hasn't looked that good.
Yeah, well, I think it's partially how expressive it is and how many, there's a lot of shots in the game that focus on characters' faces because they're so expressive. Like, you think of, like, for example, like early in the game when you're in the barrel and the pirate's about to throw you onto the Forsaken Island or the Forbidden Island or whatever.
Spoilers.
And, Link is sort of like freaking out and caw-caw! Sorry, that was my game. But he's making these faces, and one of they use like this visual joke where it's counting down to you getting catapulted on the island, and it's like every time it's changing his face, and you get a lot of personality out of that. To say nothing of the gameplay in that game, but it's just I really like how charming that game is. But anyways, that's sort of very tangentially related to Majora's Mask, which I'm excited for.
Okay, Majora's Mask. We are all very happy.
Yay! Well, what else is exciting? There's the good guys at CD Projekt Red have announced that Witcher 3 is going to come with 16 free DLC packs.
I'm gonna pause right.
Oh yeah.
I'm pausing right there. I saw so many stories online from people being like, "This is bad DLC." I was like, "It's free? I don't even understand what your complaint is right now."
I have an interesting thought on that because I love CD Projekt Red and I think they're really very consumer oriented.
Don't be that guy, Steven.
No.
Please
so
don't be that guy.
And I like what they're doing with that. We have to sort of agree here. Like, and they even admitted it when they announced this. They were like, we were doing this because we hope it sets a precedent. And I agree. I hope it sets a precedent. But it's also sort of just free good marketing.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, yeah, we're going to add a piece of horse armor. Of course, it's free. Yeah, that's cool. But it's like, that's pretty much a marketing attempt. And it's a good one. And it's in consumers' favor. So I'm not like saying it's a bad thing. It's like there's going to be 16 pieces of DLC. And I'm like, there was a ton of stuff added to The Witcher 2. Yeah, that's not news. I don't know. It seems so weird to be like, this is an arbitrary number, because they might not stop at 16. They probably won't. They never do.
But no, here's my problem, is that there has been so much forced gamer outrage lately with this story, and then with the the Just Cause 3, like an early build screenshot for that game showed microtransactions, and the news stories were already coming out when Game Informer announced, yes, we're showing off Just Cause 3. People were like, this is why microtransactions will ruin Just Cause 3. That the developers had to come out and say, yeah, that was an early build that we were screwing around with, and there's no microtransactions in the game. Like, gamer outrage is getting to the point, and Steven, you're the one who mentioned it today. We're calling a gate at the end of anything that happens. Like, now we're all of Assassin's Creed gate. There's Advanced Warfare gate. Like,
my thoughts on whatever the real gate is aside, yeah, that just drives me nuts. It's like, no, it's not a gate. The Watergate scandal wasn't about water.
Yeah, I don't, but there's a lot of faux outrage amongst.
Yeah, well, it's like
now.
and Vox, who Polygon and stuff. Lately I've been a little not quite as enthralled with Polygon. They're getting a little clickbaity and sort of playing on outrage. But Vox Media, I just see so many editors posting their stories and like, we're going to talk about this gate or that gate, and I'm like, oh my god, stop perpetuating that commoditization of outrage. It's so stupid.
Yeah, like, if you want to have a conversation about, hey, maybe Ubisoft shouldn't have released Assassin's Creed Unity so soon, maybe it has issues, that's a perfect thing to talk about. But don't start like the top 10 reasons that Assassin's Creed Unity is stealing your money. It should just be consumer advocacy. It should be like, yeah, this game isn't very good. Okay, moving on. Like, we don't have to lose our minds over this, guys. We can just be like, yeah, okay, that game wasn't very good. No muss, no fuss.
There's kind of an
just don't buy it,
amount of outrage and entitlement going on with a lot of these things, and like it's exactly like you said. I feel like they should. The company should probably be working on their games to make them not glitchy pieces of junk, but B, like, if you're a consumer, then your option is to not buy that thing.
Yeah, you want to know why I stopped buying Assassin's Creed games? Because 3 was terrible. That's why I'm not even involved in this right now. I'm just like, yeah, 3 was, that game was really bad, and I have not played an Assassin's Creed since, and you know what? I've been a happier person for it. I don't know.
I mean, you know me. I've never really been big on that series, even the ones that people liked. So, I mean, I can't really comment on that. I just, what I can say is that that whole, like, the embargo is 12 hours after release.
Oh, that's wrong.
There is absolutely. They knew that game was They knew it wasn't ready. It was we need to get it out now so it can be in Microsoft's bundle, so that way we can all make a ton of money. We'll release it now and fix it later. I feel like that's sort of that is the conclusion. Like, there's no other cut about it. And only now that it's like, oh yeah, we're in trouble. Now they're like, we're gonna fix that. I'm like, well, you shouldn't have done it to begin with. And that's why, like, I think it's good on Kotaku where they were like, yeah, from now on, if we get an embargo that's after release, we're just gonna break it.
Yeah, but I guess...
And I think that's smart from a PR standpoint, because what is the developer going to say? well, then we're not going to give Kotaku reviewables anymore. It's like, then they very clearly are the one who is anti-consumer.
Well, let me ask this question. So, Lords of the Fallen, when I played it, it had some serious issues. I had very huge problems playing that game. That game did not feel like it should have been released. Where were all the news stories talking about, the top 10 reasons that Lords of the Fallen missed QA or something like that? Is it because Lords of the Fallen isn't as big as Assassin's Creed? Is that all it comes down to? Is it really just these clickbait articles?
I think it comes down to the publisher also. There sounds like there's every right to have that sort of outrage with Lords of the Fallen. But, I think this is sort of with Ubisoft, who has a history of these sort of anti-consumer practices. And I do think it's an industry-wide thing. I think that's why it's good that Kotaku took that stance. Sega did the same thing. Sega didn't send out reviewables of Sonic Boom. The game is apparently a complete broken mess. And you know why?
This is my shocked face.
People will... No, it's a broken mess. We need to get past the joke that Sonic is terrible. Generations was good. Lost World was okay. But the more important thing is that this is apparently so broken that they're comparing it to Sonic 2006.
That is pretty bad.
And it had less than a year turnaround time, and it's developed by ex-Naughty Dog people. It's to an extent, it's what? First of all, how lucrative is this business of you releasing broken Sonic games and then monetizing the merchandising of it? Are you making enough money to warrant just continually pumping out bad games and even having good developers make bad games? But it's that was that is we don't want people to have word on this before it's purchasable, so they just buy it immediately. And
yeah, I guess I'm fine with that, but the outrage over it. It's like people that get pissed off when the next Madden game, oh man, Madden wasn't as good as the last one. I'm like, well then stop buying it. When I got done with Assassin's Creed, I stopped buying those games because I found them to be janky and they got on my nerves. And so I've been staying out of it. Vote with your dollars. Don't vote with clickbait articles. Just don't, it's like the Simpsons joke. Don't look.
That work. That's a good argument, and I agree completely. It's sort of like the people who go, "I'm so tired of clickbait." The response is, "Then stop clicking on it."
Yeah. I mean, I will not click. I'm actively trying not to do any more clickbait articles because it just started to really upset me. I want to enjoy video games. I don't want to sit here and make it this terrible thing that annoys the crap out of me. I like reading, but I don't.
That point with a lot of people, and it's kind of sad. I think I think a lot of people have lost sight of why they game in the first place. It's kind of become a compulsion. I'm into games and I have to continue keeping up on them, and I have to continue expressing my opinions about things and being outraged about things that don't actually affect me. And I don't know.
I remember when I was 6, I used to be concerned about, did Metal Gear have a better Metacritic rating than Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time? That was when I was 6. I'm over that now. I'm kind of grown up.
Because Metacritic didn't exist, but I get what you're doing.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. I'm old, guys. I'm old. I'm allowed to say that.
Old. Oh my God! Says
you're an old man.
It is
years older than me. Jesus.
Am I the oldest one on the podcast right now? Caitlin, please be older than me.
Nope, sorry.
Oh.
You're not that much older than me, though.
Okay.
You're maybe about 6 months older than me.
There we go. Okay, so Steven's a baby, and so's Derek. Ha ha ha.
Sure.
Okay, can we talk about happy things? Give me some happy news. Derek, how about you make me happy? Pick the news story that'll probably make me the happiest in the world.
Don't pick the Bloodborne one.
I wanted to be like, God damn it!
Supremely tempted to do that.
All right, let's get it out of the way. Bloodborne
was delayed.
About almost 2 months. It's been delayed till the end of March. I'm not surprised. I am not upset. I have counted to 10, and no, every Souls game has been delayed some amount of time, either with the PC version of Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 1 was delayed almost a week from its original date. I'm not concerned about it, and if at the end of the day I get a better, more stable product with a frame rate above 10, I'm happy.
Yeah, the 12 is going to be really worth it.
Yeah, 12, dude, that's the key development time right there. I was kind of surprised that the community, the internet didn't kind of rage out over that like I was worried they were going to.
Well, I think that's a pretty short delay.
Yeah, that's a comfortable delay.
That's not like, Rob texted me
Oh no.
the morning they delayed it, and goes, I'm like half asleep, and I just get this text. It's like, they delayed Bloodborne. I'm like, till when? And the text returning is till the end of November. And I went on this tirade. I was like, Rob, you got so mad at Arkham City because they clearly announced it knowing that they were going to delay it. I'm like, there's no way they didn't know they were going to have to delay this game 6 months. And he goes, oh, sorry, iPhone auto-corrected. End of March.
Yes, my iPhone did go a little bat crap crazy, and I apologize for that. But oh yeah, if it was delayed almost a full year, I would have been the first person losing my mind. Like, come on, guys, you had to know that that was going to happen. But thankfully, it's only about a 2-month delay. I think we'll get a better product. I think having people find cracks in their world during the beta kind of scared them a little bit. And frankly, I'm okay with that. And also, how many articles, you talk about clickbait articles, how many articles have we seen like, it's not a good idea for Sony to release the Order 1886, or 1866, what? Is it 1886. It's not a good idea to release the Order and Bloodborne in the same month. They're stupid. They shouldn't do that. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, but one of those games is going to tank.
I don't think the Order is going to tank.
Really?
I think
that game is.
I think that game is going to be not very good, but I don't think it's going to tank. I think it's going to sell. I think it's going to sell because it is. All my problems with that game at E3, I didn't really like what I played. It is very, very pretty. And sometimes a pretty game will sell. I think the first Uncharted wasn't a very good game. That sold on graphics. Uncharted 2 is a better game. But Uncharted 1 kind of sold on its graphics and the half-tuck. Let's be honest.
I still buy it for the half-tuck.
Of course you would.
I mentioned that the half-tuck is so famous. I mentioned it in my Dragon Age review.
I know. That's why I put it there, big guy. Synergy.
Science, energy, electrolyte, stereotypes.
Yeah, so Bloodborne delayed. I'm fine. I'll get over it. I'm not mad.
Here,
it's not that big a deal.
Use this to wipe up your tears, Rob. Here.
Yeah, now you'll have time to be playing Final Fantasy Type 0 instead.
That is true.
Then you can get Bloodborne.
Yay.
And I also have more time to play Dragon Age. I mean, I'm okay. And Witcher. And The Witcher.
The witchiest.
The witchiest Witcher.
The Witcher 3 witchiest.
Guy around. Witcher 3, the witchening.
Yeah, again, it's a good thing, and I think game delays are totally fine. I had written a news story a little bit ago about another game that had been delayed, and the communities were kind of like losing their minds. And I said, look, I would much rather have the game delayed than come out and not be good. Like, didn't Miyamoto say that years ago? When like his games were getting delayed left and right, and I totally agree with it. Like,
delayed game eventually good, rushed game always bad.
Probably not going to be good.
Yeah, like when has a delay ever really hurt a game in the long run?
Yeah, you don't sit there and go, man, that delay just took away resources and didn't give them enough time to finish that game.
It's like how people are like, Final Fantasy 15, all these delays are taking away from the game. It's like, no, the game was restarted and it's not making any difference.
That game wasn't even in development until probably full development until...
It wasn't until development until like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's why when people are like, it's been in development for 10 years. No, it hasn't.
As much as I love writing those kinds of stories, it's not true. So, like, everybody calm down.
Everybody calm down.
Calm down. Tell her to chill. All right. More news.
Turk, I think you should talk to her about your feelings.
Telltale announced that the first of the Game of Thrones game series is going to be coming out soon, and it's going to be a 6-episode arc. I don't know if they had said that before, had they?
I don't think so.
I hadn't heard it.
I think that's new. Yeah, so 6 episodes. First one is coming out soon. Don't know.
Soon, quote unquote, soon.
Yeah, at some point, it said it'll be before the end of the year, so before the end of December. But
I'm excited.
The first episode
I'm such the Game of Thrones fanboy over here.
Yes.
I'm totally okay with all of this.
Oh
yeah, I think all of you guys are going to be super down with that, huh?
It's called Iron from Ice. And it will be good, probably, because it's Telltale. So,
no one ever criticized them of having bad writing.
I think it'll be really good. I'm interested. I think they got some good ideas, and where can they go with it? I'm very interested.
I think it'll be good. I'm excited. I actually need to finish both Walking Dead Season 2 and Wolf Among Us.
Oh, God, I keep forgetting to finish Wolf Among Us.
I'll be really interested to see what you thought of Walking Dead Season 2, because a lot of people didn't like it. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of my students actually were pretty down on it.
I'm on episode 3 of both of those, so I should probably pick them up. But I saw that they had both come out for PS4, so I'm a little bit tempted to just get those and then start over since it's been so long. I don't know. Because they're pretty cheap. They're like, what, 25? Or are they 30, I guess, since they're retail? either way, they're pretty cheap. So that's a PSA to everybody. If you haven't played either of those yet, you can grab them for PS4 if you have one of those. And I think they're out on the other consoles too. But
I missed it in the Skype chat. Yes, Dragon Quest IX was developed by Level 5.
hooray!
Thank you.
You were right, Rob.
Shut up, Mimsy!
Shut up, Mimsy. Mimsy,
Yeah.
shut up.
Yes, and the final news story I was going to bring up was just that they, I guess Square Enix has internally decided on a release time frame for Final Fantasy 15, but they ain't saying.
Of course they're not.
So I hope it's
Mm.
sit here and
now.
ponder. Guesses? I'm guessing end of 2015 in Japan, early 2016 here.
We should
That's
make
my
a wager
guess,
on
too.
this.
Well, especially with the demo coming out in March.
Personally,
Are we
I
gonna-
think it's going to be end of 2015 Japan, early 2016 here. I agree with Derek.
Okay, so we better prices right this so we can all get our days in, and then
When- when did you say it's
one day
gonna be?
before.
I think Derek and I said the same thing, and that's end of 2015 for Japan, early 2016 for us.
Yeah, Caitlin agrees too.
Yes.
I'd say I'm going to say early 2016 for Japan. I'm
Alright.
not that far off from you guys. I think it's going to be early 2016.
Yeah, I think with the way they're showing it and talking about it, I think that game is about a year out.
Yeah, and we'll probably get a pretty meaty update on the development at E3, so that'll be fun.
I hope.
Yeah, and with the demo coming in March, I think they've confirmed now that it's day and date with Type 0, isn't it?
Oh, have they confirmed that?
I'm pretty sure Tabata said that in an interview.
Awesome. I hope so.
Don't quote me off the top of the head, but I'm pretty sure they said that it's going to be
Nope.
able to launch with that.
Held accountable for that until the end of your days.
Fair enough. I mean, I hope that's the case because I want to play it. And they sort of claim that they won't be able to make giant changes from the demo, but they said they're going to take feedback from the demo into account. And I think that'll be really good because it'll give them a chance to sort of be a little more open and make improvements if there's things that need to be changed. Other than the whole we need a diverse party, which they're sort of already boned on the whole diverse party thing.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird to see.
Yeah.
It does bum me out that they have an all-guy cast. Maybe they can do something interesting with it, but that, I don't know. I like having the diversity in the cast, and after listening to all the awesome banter between characters in Dragon Age, I almost said Dragon Quest, listening to all that awesome banter, which BioWare is really good at, I don't know. Maybe they can do it. It's just, it's not as
I don't
interesting.
think it's impossible for it to be an interesting story with cool characters. I just think it's, the scale is definitely not quite as big when you only have these 4 dudes wearing leather,
All black.
traveling around in a convertible, hanging out. Like, not that there's nothing that can come from that, but
I'm calling it right now. When that
think it-
demo is released, you're going to have the Greased Lightning song playing over YouTube videos.
No.
I'm calling that one right now.
I think the cast, as it's presented, creates a very specific framework for the story to operate in. So I think that can be limiting. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
I think we're all very interested in how that one turns
Yeah,
out.
I'm stoked for it. And I can't wait for it to come out. So sooner that demo comes out, the better. We can check it out.
Agreed.
Yep, that's
Yep.
all I have for news today.
All right, we good?
We're good.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to the podcast. Be sure to like us on iTunes. I would love to get to 100 ratings this year, but I kind of doubt that's going to happen, and it makes me sad. But,
Feed me, Seymour. Feed me. Reviews.
feed me, Seema. The guy sure looks like plant food to me.
Sure looks like
the guy
plant food to me.
looks like plant food to me.
Anybody?
Wow.
I'm with you.
No, I know you are.
We definitely won't get there.
Yeah, that's probably
We have Britney Spears, Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, good.
Pup,
I'm
pup,
with
pup,
this.
poker face, pup, pup, poker face.
Poker
Ma,
face.
ma, ma, ma.
Yeah, I'm a brother.
I'm sorry. Was this the music podcast? Am I
Yes,
in the wrong
yes.
podcast?
No. You're at the right podcast, Caitlin. You're at the right podcast. Caitlin, did you have fun?
I had lots of fun. Thank you for having me.
All right, and now we're going to move into our interview with Cameron Lee, the producer of Dragon Age Inquisition. Enjoy.
So my name's Cameron Lee. I'm the producer on Dragon Age Inquisition at BioWare Edmonton.
All right, awesome, Cameron. So right away, Dragon Age Inquisition, one of the things that really struck me about the game was just the very title of the game, Dragon Age Inquisition.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of it's very evocative of a lot of things in history and a lot of things in fantasy. And so I kind of wanted to ask, first off, what made you guys kind of decide to go with this route to kind of get away from maybe the Dragon Age 3 that you could have gone with after 2? And also, what are you implying by using a title like Inquisition?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a couple of things with it. So, first of all, if we put a 3 behind Dragon Age, what we think is that people are probably going to be going to wonder whether they need to have played the previous 2 Dragon Age games. So it certainly implies that, particularly with the BioWare game that has such a focus on story. However, with Dragon Age as a franchise, we're not really telling the story of a single character where you have to sort of take them through these games, but we're telling the story, I guess, more of the world of Dragon Age as it progresses through time, with various events taking place. So that's really the reason why No 3. And when it comes to Inquisition, you are right, it's an evocative title, but it's also a title which speaks to the goals of the Inquisition in our game. So when people hear the word the Inquisition, they think of one or two things, either Monty Python or they think of the Spanish Inquisition. And with the Spanish Inquisition, right or wrong, and despite all the horrible things they do, in their minds at least, they were trying to uncover the truth. And it's no different for Dragon Age Inquisition. You are the leader of this large organization that you've brought together different factions and different groups and different people, all with the goal of uncovering the truth behind all this chaos that's happening in the world, the truth behind what happened with the big explosion that tore a rift in the sky, what's causing the civil war in LA, why are all these different factions in chaos and potentially corrupted. So it's really that sense of you being the leader and you pulling these people in who, with this goal of uncovering the truth, because you're the only ones who are willing to do something about it and stand up and bring some stability to the world.
Awesome. Now, moving forward, one of my biggest things coming off of Dragon Age Origins, I loved replaying that game and starting it with different races and different character classes and kind of seeing where the story took me. And in Dragon Age 2, you had Hawke, who was a human character. You could obviously choose genders and make a lot of decisions. When you guys announced Dragon Age Inquisition and you said you were going back to allowing us to pick our races and basically start a fresh character, I found that to just be an awesome move back to Origins. But how do you guys manage to go back from kind of a more single narrative focus in Dragon Age 2 with a single human character? How do you guys manage to still make this a narrative-focused game when there are now so many choices in being a Qunari, being an elf, being a dwarf, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's always a tough challenge. I mean, the writers at BioWare have a lot of experience with working with these sorts of branching narratives and understanding the impacts of different decisions and actions that you take in the world. So they're quite familiar with it, but it was certainly a no-brainer for us. We knew that we wanted to have, I guess, one of the pillars of the game being, I guess, this concept of play your way. And what I mean by that is the ability for you to have your own character, to pick your gender, pick your race, pick how you look, play the way you want to play, whether it be in tactical or in sort of action or a combination of both. Craft the equipment that you want to be in. So there's a lot of decisions that have been made throughout the course of development which strengthen that ability for you to have your own fantasy fulfillment rather than us force a fantasy fulfillment upon you. So I think that's sort of the biggest thing that we've taken, and hopefully the players will be able to sort of, as you said, play through multiple times and see these different outcomes as they form.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is that going to play kind of directly into the replayability and the role-playing aspect of the game? Getting to the Landsmeet as an elf in Dragon Age Origins was very different than getting there as a human. I mean, as a human, you weren't ever going to be crowned king. As an elf, you couldn't be crowned king, but as a human, you possibly could. Are we going to see those kinds of narrative branches just based on the racial selection of your Inquisitor?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of spreads even more so than Origins. Like Origins, we front-loaded a lot of the race-specific and class-specific content right up front. So people got sort of slapped in the face with it, and it became a very memorable thing. But it meant that the rest of the game, there was only a few sort of bigger chunks, that really reacted to some of these fundamental decisions of who are you. So with Inquisition, what we wanted to do was have more of the game react to those fundamental decisions. So we spread that sort of content out throughout the entire game. So there'll be scenarios where, for example, if you go to Orlais, where it's a very, I guess, sort of posh, very political kind of an environment, certainly dominated by humans. If you're an elf or if you're a Qunari, it's a lot more difficult for you to work within that political structure than if you're a human. So that's just one example, but it's more prevalent as it sort of goes through the entire game than Origins.
Mm-hmm. When you guys showed the game at E3, I remember sitting in the theater there and just seeing this huge open world when you showed the town of Redcliffe and every area that you could go to. How are you guys looking at exploration in this game? Like, are we going to be able to find different quests in the environment? Are we going to be able to find different pieces of loot? How do you guys make it interesting to explore the world without running into those problems that a lot of open world games have, where they just have repeated content over and over again?
Yeah. It's a really good question. We spent a lot of time trying to understand how to do an open world experience with BioWare storytelling. It was always one of the ambitions of the game to bring the best of those two together, because so often, as you mentioned, Western RPGs at least tend to focus on either one or the other. They tend to be very open world, but with a relatively weak story, or they're very linear with a strong story. And we wanted to have the best of both worlds. So it took us a while, but eventually we got to the point where we understood that we could use the Inquisition, the organization that the player leads, as the glue that holds those two together. So what you'll do, as you play through the game, each major sort of open area that you go to has a purpose for the Inquisition being there, and has a connection to the overall narrative that we're telling. And you'll go through this world, and you'll have some general idea about what the Inquisition is trying to accomplish in this area. But then there's so much sort of side content scattered around that, whether it be sort of dungeons or castles or capturing a keep or quests, getting horses for your Inquisition or whatever it happens to be. So there is narrative tiebacks into the main story. And then you'll be earning power and influence for your Inquisition as well, and then spending that power and influence at the war table. So you have this big sort of map that spans Ferelden and Orlais. And on that map you can order your Inquisition agents to do some actions throughout the world, and that costs power. So you can have your agents go off and assassinate a political leader, or gather rare crafting materials for you, or it could be repairing a bridge that you repairing a destroyed bridge that you found in the world, so you can then cross over the valley and see more content. Or it's also the mechanism by which you progress through the next parts of the story. So it's this sort of gameplay loop of there is a purpose for your Inquisition, in this area, go and do that, and power, spend that power and progress through the story. So it's been this really interesting connection between that sort of open world exploration and story.
Cool. I'm getting flashes of Joe Abercrombie's The First Law trilogy. If you've ever read that, I'm kind of like imagining myself as Inquisitor Glokta and doing really mean, nasty things to people behind the scenes.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but yeah, it could well be that.
Awesome. It was kind of amazing. We were talking on the website a few days ago that Dragon Age Origins is 5 years old now. I mean, I was back in graduate school when I first played it the first time. How has the RPG landscape changed in 5 years? Like, how do you guys feel? This is your third game in the franchise, but it almost feels like Dragon Age has been around longer than 5 years. So how do you guys feel about bringing this game out? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the differences in the landscape right now for RPGs?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you raise that and talk about it being 5 years old. For BioWare, it feels like it's been 10 years, because Dragon Age Origins, at least, has been in development for so long, as we're starting to build up the lore and the world and the franchise. So certainly for us, it's a lot longer than that. And the landscape's changed dramatically. I remember RPGs. Some of the first games that I really got into as a gamer were the old gold box games, like Pool of Radiance and Champions of Krynn and stuff like that. Sort of going from that type of an RPG to what we have today, certainly things are very different. What is the same, though, is story and this concept of you taking on a role and role-playing within that world and being able to fulfill those different fantasies that I mentioned earlier. So there's a lot of similarities still, but things have changed. Certainly open world has become a really big focus. So that's sort of open world from anything kind of like, obviously Skyrim, but also Fallout, Red Dead, GTA even, has a very big open world. So things, the players' expectations, I think, are shifting a little bit to being this sort of, I guess, like a freedom, I guess is probably the best word. That they have the freedom to get lost in the world and to be able to make their own decision about where they go and how they interact with the story of the world. So I think that's where the exploration and the Inquisition really sort of bridges that gap and really sort of strengthens that concept, because the players can get involved in the story at their leisure and at their choice, or they can go off and explore the world and get lost in it and discover all the sort of little nooks and crannies and dungeons and things like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Cool. I mean, I think I could sit here and talk your ear off about Dragon Age all day, so I just want to wrap it up with one last question, kind of looking at the future. We opened the conversation talking about how we moved away from Dragon Age 3 as the title. Is that kind of indicative about where you guys will take this franchise in the future? Are we more focused on telling different stories in the world of Thedas instead of focusing in, like Mass Effect, on a single character? Where do you guys see Dragon Age going in the future?
Good question. It's really too hard to tell right now. We certainly want to sort of see how Inquisition does and what people like about it and what they don't like about it, and sort of take sort of any learnings that we have from Inquisition, and we can sort of see what we want to do. Certainly, from a narrative piece, we know the general gist of the sort of whole series of story arcs that we want to tell. And that can always be adjusted slightly, when we start to think about, if people really like this particular character, then maybe we can reuse it, or maybe we tell a completely different story like we've been doing. But either way, it will be the story of the Dragon Age world. But as I said, whether that same character can fit within multiple spots in that story, it's something we can certainly look at once we see what Inquisition does, and and how people like it, I guess.
Awesome. Well, I mean, we're all really excited at RPG Fan right now. I think I can say that. There was almost a murder over who was going to get the review copy for the game. I thought I was going to have to drive to Steven's house and beat him up and take it. So I think at the very least, you guys are, well, we're very violent at RPG Fan sometimes, but
that's fair enough.
I think you guys are well on your way. And Cameron, I really want to thank you for speaking to the listeners a little bit about the game.
No worries, man. I really appreciate it, and I do appreciate you taking the time to talk to me as well. So it's good to get a chance to speak to you guys and have the your listeners and readers hear a little bit more about the game. So that's fantastic. I appreciate it.